All right, so let's please welcome our first scholar, Vivek Asvan. She's going to come down and say a few words. Vivek?
Thank you, ISBM. Thank you, everyone. My name is Vivek Ashtavansh. I'm a faculty member at McGill University. I've been given 5 minutes and 3 topics to talk about. First, gratitude. Second, past research. Third, current and future research. Okay, first, gratitude. So I thought about whom to express gratitude. The obvious gratitude receivers are your parents, your partner, spouse, children, dissertation committee, etc. I'm going off the book now. I'm thanking a person whom I've never thanked in my life. Any guess? Now, lack of modesty, me. I think most often we forget to thank ourselves. Of course, the gratitude for parents, everyone, doctoral dissertation committee chair, co-authors, and issues. Past research. Now, consistent with what Lynn and others spoke this morning, I'll talk about one article that has been published. So what I did was I measured every US public firms and 8 types of business functional risk, financial risk, supply chain risk, etc. And I then related that measure, and that was collected from annual reports and earnings calls transcripts. And I tried to predict and explain using econometrics and machine learning 2 outcome variables. One, how long does the disclosure of risk, how does that impact the longevity of their B2B relations with suppliers, strategic partners, etc. And second, does that increase the likelihood of acquiring new customers? This was a fun paper because it was co-authored with a person who's not a tenure-track professor. The current research is I'm measuring every private and public firms' demand for AI skills and climate change skills. And I'm relating that to how these companies utilize those skills, assuming they are able to hire people with those skills. How do they use these skills? And the uses are manifest, or I'm assuming they are mentioned in the firm's annual reports and again, earnings calls transcripts. So it's one thing that you demand, I need people with skills on generative AI, agentic AI, but are you able to use those skills? And there's a spillover that I'm looking at. For example, a company might be asking for generative AI in technology, but it might be using those skills in supply chain performance. So that is my current and ongoing research. I'm happy to answer questions now or later. I hope I took fewer than 5 minutes. Thank you, and over to them. And she's my co-author. The lovely part is she and I, so Journal of Business Ethics published an article that she and I co-authored. A week after they accepted our article, Financial Times took off JBE. So I joke with my co-authors that you co-author with me and I will lower the bar. So over to Dr. Ramani. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
All right. So next up, our second scholar, Nandini Ramani. Come on down.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nandini Ramani, and I'm an assistant professor at Texas A&M University. So I'm just, following on Vivek's. I'm going to spend this time mostly to thank some important people, and then I'll spend a little bit of time talking about my work. So first of all, I want to thank Stefan and Andrew for giving, for recognizing my work in this way. It really means a lot to me. So thank you. Then I would like to begin by thanking my advisor, Raji Srinivasan. She's been an amazing and incredible mentor and advisor to me. Then I would like to thank my Aggie family. So importantly, David Griffith for hiring me at Texas A&M. But also some incredible mentors. I've had Alina Thorescu, Len Bedley, Hari Sridhar, Steve Anderson, Juan, some amazing colleagues who have basically helped, supported me and helped me develop my work in so many different ways. So I'm super grateful. I would also like to thank the editors, the area editors, the co-editors who've helped develop my research in so many different ways. And then I would also like to thank a lot of my co-authors, Larissa Kovalenko, Girish Malapragada, Vishal Narayan, Vivek. So I would like to thank all my co-authors as well, whom I've learned so much from. Beyond this, like a little bit about my work. So my work is primarily in two streams. So the first stream of my research focuses on regulatory changes. So how firms can use marketing effectively to respond to regulatory changes. So some of the regulatory changes I've looked at are economic liberalization, changes to tariffs that lead to import competition. I look at a corporate social responsibility mandate that forces companies to spend 2% of their profits on CSR. So these are some examples of the regulatory changes I study and how firms can use marketing effectively to respond to these changes. The other stream of my research looks at the determinants and consequences of myopic management practices in firms. So I look at some antecedents of myopic management practices and try to draw implications for how firms can reduce such practices. So some of the ways that firms can decrease such practices is to increase marketing department power. Also in a recent paper, I find that actually going public in the restaurant industry has a lot of downstream consequences for consumer evaluations, and look at some ways that firms can reduce these adverse consumer evaluations. So I could go on talking about my projects for a long time, but I'll stop over here. Thank you so much once again.
All right, so thank you to our new scholars. Now I'm going to think this one. This back over. Maybe.
Yeah, that's the.
Yeah, that's the right
good.
one. I
Yeah.
just have to bring
Thank
this
you.
over to share the screen. So let's share. Okay, so now we're going to have a chance to sort of hear about the journey and the contribution of our distinguished research fellows, and by alphabetical order. I'm sure you get some good authorship that way as well.
Story of my life, actually.
I should just flip my names, and so I could be first author on all my papers. But I'd like to welcome our. He does so much for obviously research you'll hear about, but as you heard Stefan say, he and Lisa have been in the last few PhD camps, been the major drivers of success of the camp. So we can't thank Kersey enough, both in terms of his impact on the discipline as well as impact on ISBM. So Kersey, if you want to come up and say a few words.
Thank you. Thank you so much for those warm words, Andrew. They mean a lot to me. You know, before I even get talking about a whole load of people that I owe a great deal of gratitude to, I wanted to take a few minutes to kind of just set the ball rolling by talking about some personal people that I owe an immense debt of gratitude to. I'm going to start by taking an institutional perspective first, and then zooming in just as we do in our papers as well. First off, I want to thank the folks at ISBM. You have been tremendous as a resource in this field and this sub-discipline of marketing for so many different years. And I'm particularly grateful that the co-founder, one of the co-founders, and a driving force of this is here today as well. So thank you, Gary. Thank you, Stefan. And thank you, Emily. Really appreciate that. I'd like to start because I have the luxury of a little more time, so I'll ask that you indulge me. I want to start by expressing my immense gratitude to my now departed parents, my beloved mom and dad, who showed me rather than told me how to conduct myself. I learned from them. My mom always thought of me as a star, always. And I never disavowed her of the notion. My father, on the other hand, took a hard knocks approach, and he was convinced, and this is, I'm paraphrasing him, that I'd be playing cards on the street. Now, that's a very Indian way of saying you're not going to amount to much, son. So I hope one could say in hindsight that the validity of that prediction is at least debatable. But you know, it's the yin and yang of parenting, I think, from my parents. They both love me immensely, and I'm truly grateful to them for teaching me the way they did. I also would like to thank my sweetheart, long-standing and long-patient, suffering wife, Chandni. Many of you know her and have had the pleasure of meeting her. I'm the quiet one in the family. So I need that. I need that. And those of you who know her are nodding. So yes, absolutely. She has steadfastly maintained over the last 26 years of our marriage, in the face of significant evidence to the contrary, that I do have some potential. And for that, I thank her. But just to keep things real, when we first met 28 years ago, she said, her first words to me were, I need a haircut. So just so you know, again, the yin-yang thing continues in my life. My parents, my kids, of course, adults now, 26 and 24-year-old Jahan and Kiara, whom I owe a great deal again for keeping me on the ground, as it were. There's this phrase in my family, and it goes around something like this. No meal is complete without dad wearing at least some of it. So I just wanted to share with you, with these kind of people in my lives, you can see how you tend to keep your feet on the ground. But let me, if you don't mind, I'm going to now switch gears, if you don't mind, and first acknowledge a debt of immense gratitude to the person who got me started on this path, my advisor. Gary Frazier has just retired from academia. I had the pleasure of meeting him a few months ago in Madrid. He has been the deepest influence and the person who set me on this path of interorganizational relationships, B2B relationships, and just got my juices flowing, as it were. So the first person that I would like to thank who played a massive part in my development and training is my advisor, Dr. Gary Frazier. I'm sorry that he wasn't able to make it here today, but I will be reaching out to him to thank him for everything that he's done for me. I also want to acknowledge a significant debt of gratitude and a long-standing friendship and almost a brotherhood with my colleagues who were students of, a part of my cohort at USC when I went to school nearly 30 years ago. There were a bunch of us who hung out together. Rajesh Chandy is now at the London Business School. Jaideep Prabhu is at Cambridge. And Om Narasimhan is at the London School of Economics. All these folks have done tremendously well. You know their names likely as well. Just amazing people. I was the laggard, frankly, but they still allowed me to hang out with them, the cool kids, as it were. So I appreciate that a great deal. And to this day, we remain literally brothers, ready to count on each other for anything that we need. I also wanted to inject a note of humility into this. And what best way to show or showcase humility by showing how badly you screwed up sometimes, okay? So just in case you're wondering, one of the things that I always see when we see people getting awards, such as the one I'm fortunate to get today, is that you think that, oh, this comes naturally, etc. I should start by telling you that whenever anyone asks me for advice on the AMA interviewing process, I immediately tell them my own experience to give them a caveat. And that is, when I was done with my many interviews that I got, I was lucky enough to get, at that time AMA, we'd all come down to one place, and over 2 or 3 days, we'd have the jamboree, if you will. At the end of that jamboree, there was scuttlebutt going around among the professors that this man is insane. And I want to share that with you, because as you can see from my character already, I'm fairly impulsive, I'm fairly out there in terms of my behaviors. When I'm nervous, it becomes even worse. So I just wanted to tell you this because I was able to recover from that. And just in case you think that it's a linear path and it's going to work out great, but you need to have no mistakes along the way, I'm going to show you every mistake that I made along the way as well. Just so that you understand that I was just lucky, incredibly lucky to have the kind of success that I've had. Let me then take you now from AMA interviewing, finding a job, to basically keeping that job, okay? And here I'd like to really acknowledge my debt of gratitude to two people who played a massive role in my first couple of years of my career. Robert Fisher, who's now at the University of Alberta, almost on his way to becoming Professor Emeritus. He was at USC, then at Ivy. He was the one instrumental in getting me to Ivy, and I'm forever grateful to him for that. And then Shantanu Datta and Mark Bergen. Shantanu had just joined USC as I was leaving, and he kind of took me under his wing. My first couple of publications were with him and Mark, and just got me feeling confident about myself, which is what all of us need from time to time. It's such a hard discipline, right? We routinely do the whipping boy tactics on each other. It's kind of nice to have people who say, no, it's going to be all right. Just work and it'll happen. Shantanu and Robert and Mark Bergen were those people for me. And I truly acknowledge that support and help they had. Of course, none of this would have been possible, as Nandini mentioned, without a superb bunch of co-authors. Friends and, in fact, brothers of mine, if you will. Some of them, many of whom are in the room today. So I'm really grateful for that. I'm going to start by singling out Vishal over there, sitting quietly in the corner with that beatific smile on his face. Vishal is always smiling with that and has been a tremendously positive influence on my life. So Vishal, thank you so much for being my buddy and my friend and my co-author. I'm also in absentia shouting out to Ken Watner over in Stavanger and BI in Norway. He and I go back a long, long way. We've struggled together through things. We've succeeded together as well. And we continue to remain extremely close today. So Ken Watner, if you're listening, I'm shouting out to you. Another person way out in Australia, Eric Moy, a favorite person of mine, just in terms of his sunny side up look to life, always smiling, always gentle, always kind. That's Eric Moy for you. I'd also like to point out Stefan in that respect, this Stefan. I've never heard an ill word come out from this gentleman's mouth. And I've known you now two and a half decades, perhaps. Yeah, we've gone back a long ways. So for me to say that I've never heard you speak ill of anybody, that's an incredible achievement. Thank you for being who you are, Stefan. One more person in absentia is Jan Heder, a tremendous support, a force in the field, and a gentleman and a scholar. Those of you who know Jan know exactly what I'm talking about. Enough said. And finally, right there, that lady, Lisa Shear. Okay, Lisa has known me since I was a doctoral student. She's been in my corner right through this journey. Always putting me up for different nominations, honors, including a little birdie tells me for this one as well. So thank you, Lisa. It means a lot to me.
Your house, please.
Pardon me?
She didn't come to your house.
No, not yet. But I live in Canada, so. Perhaps the most important people that I want to say thank you to are my doctoral student colleagues. I had the pleasure of having several of them in the room today. I want to start with a specific mention and a special mention to my friend and my first doctoral student, Sudha. Sudha Mani is now in Monash University in Australia, in Melbourne. And she was the first one who, either in a fit of bravery or foolishness, decided to hitch her boat to mine. I was a young assistant professor at the time, had no idea about what the heck I was doing, yet she came over and wanted to work with me. So more power to her. She hasn't suffered too much for it, but then the jury's still out, so we'll see what happens. But Sudha was my first student. Vivian Jeng, who's currently in Hong Kong, not here today, was my second student. And again, somebody who was willing to take a risk by reaching out and working with somebody like me, who wasn't yet well established or anything of the sort. And then I see several known faces over here, Vivek, Moeen, who's in Pakistan, Amrita, who's sitting in the back over there, and Hursana, and now most recently, the folks I'm working with at the moment, Amir and Purya, who are now at Ivy Business School, both from Iran as well. How am I doing for time, Andrew? I don't want to take up, I've got 2 minutes more? Yeah. Is that
2 to 4 minutes?
Oh, wonderful. So, given that I've gone through this litany of thank yous, I should tell you that these thank yous are but small gestures of my appreciation for everything that you folks have done for me. So thank you very much for that. I'd like to shift gears a little bit, if you don't mind, because we were asked to talk about our research. And rather than talk about the past and my path to this, I wanted to think about and present what I'm really excited about today, going forward. So I'm going to give you a small example over here of DeepSeek that just suddenly put the world on fire a year and a half ago by coming up with a brand new LLM at a significantly lower cost with significantly hobbled chips that they were using. This takes us into the world of what is known as frugal innovation, doing more with less for more, for others, that is. And I'm not going to go into the details of this, but I want to give a shout out to my colleague and one of my doctoral students currently, Amir Sabuni. He's out in the market next year, by the way. Okay. He's looking at, and I'm helping him look at, startups' frugal innovations over a 20-year period, 14 different emerging and developed markets, and the role of government policy and macroeconomic conditions on startups' output of frugal innovations, but importantly, not just how that affects their own longer-term viability, their ability to gain traction, etc., but as important, if not more so, how do these startups' innovation outputs impact the living standards of the countries in which they operate? So we're looking at more than 17,000 startups from a proprietary database over 14 different countries and 20 years to figure out, well, what are their innovations? How many of these are frugal? And if so, how do we find out about it, given that many of them would have occurred more than 2 decades ago? Well, we're using an LLM-based technique, an AI-based technique that allows us to identify potential candidates and then shortlist them and bring them to a smaller list of frugal innovations on that front. I'm not going to go into the details of all that, but it's something that I'm truly excited about. For once in my life, I'm not selling soap. I'm actually hoping to make a big difference to countries' living standards. The last thing that I would like to talk about is my other project with my other doctoral student and wonderful scholar. His name is Purya Khansari, and he's going to be out on the market as well next year. So please keep an eye open for both of them. Purya is very interested in dyadic interactions. And what we're doing, thanks to his leadership and initiative, is to look at a bunch of efforts by customers calling into a call center to resolve their difficulties or their complaints. It's a Canadian self-storage company based out of Toronto. We have 100,000 call recordings, 28,800 customers' calls over 5 years into this particular call center. And the big deal over here is that we're asking how do both parties' evolving interactions, laid out in a sequence, if you will, impact longer-term churn. Now, she's staying awfully quiet over here in the corner, but Hursana has now taken on the role of somebody who was a mentee before to becoming an amazing mentor. So big shout out to you on this. She's on this project, and Hursana is doing a tremendous job of guiding Purya along with me and working through the kinks together. So it's been an absolute pleasure. Last thing that I just want to point out over here, this is what Purya is doing, and this is his strength. He's able to transcribe and diarize all of these 100,000 calls, score them on verbal and vocal empathy, and a whole bunch of other characteristics, by the way, and then create evolving interactions, map that using a transformer model into how does that impact customer churn? 6 months down the road, 12 months down the road, up to 33 months down the road as well. Okay, folks, that's my story and I'm sticking to it. I should point out to the folks at ISBM, there's no accounting for taste, but I should tell you right up front, there are no warranties, there are no guarantees, and there are definitely no refunds, folks. So thank you. Thank you much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So let me go, I gotta share this. All right. Next up, we have our second Distinguished Research Fellow. Also, again, enormous involvement with the community of B2B scholars, with ISBM as well. And I give the floor to David Griffin. Thank you.
So those of you who know me know I hate public speaking. That is why I do not do presentations. My preference is language and writing. So what makes it absolutely worse is when I go after someone I consider to be an absolute master teacher. This is like, you know, the putting up the front band instead of the lead. But see if I can do this. And I can't do anything. There we go. Oh. So let me start by thanking the ISBM. I joined the Academy in '97. I started my PhD in '93. And it's been a community that I've always called home. Somewhere where the people said things that were exciting to me. And so I cannot thank you enough for what this community has done, that Gary and others have created and continued and devoted, and the time and effort is incredible. And I'm extremely thankful for this, and I'm extremely thankful for this honor. My research journey, I always find this, I'm a bad runner, as some of you know if you were at the PhD camp. I'm not competitive with anyone except myself, and sometimes I set goals that I cannot achieve. It's very clear. I am passionate about B2B research. This is where my industry experience was. This is why I got involved in it. There was a thing that was posted the other day on LinkedIn which named me, which upset me, but it listed like how much I had published. I had no idea, because I don't count. What I'm driven by, what my journey is how do firms build meaningful relationships that drive value? That's what I did at Paine-Webber Securities in the '90s when the whole market fell apart. It's what I did at the Hampton Company to try to engage those relationships. I'm studying and continue to study how formal and informal contracting and governance actually work to keep relationships together through changing dynamic times, as well as within the global economy. I'm a globalist. When I sort of got into all of this, it was import-export, and I got my first job at Oklahoma, which was one of the big distribution channel schools. And I was like, I fit, and it's like, of course I fit, I'm a channels guy. And so what I've been trying to do my whole time is understand how we can more effectively do those relationships. I've been inspired primarily by managers, by what business is doing. During this presentation, I'm not going to name names. That's what I said I was not going to do. And the reason is because when I tried to do it, I had 6-point font on the screen and did not have all the people I wanted to thank. There have been so many people who've been influential and inspiring in understanding their business problems. I was sitting at lunch today, and that's why I love ISBM. And there were one guy selling one of your vendors, one of your partners, right? He's doing the AI thing. He's got the simulation this after. I wish I was staying because whiskey tasting would be good. But the simulations I would really be interested in. And then there was a business, and they were talking, and they were saying, what do you need? And we got involved in this fascinating conversation about how you can build better value within the organization. So it is those types of things that you're saying, oh my gosh, this is something that's really important and really real within that business community. I personally believe that the beauty of humanity is in how people behave. And I understand that we had this conversation yesterday during the PhD camp that we've gotten rid of some of that, the behavioral side. But to me, it is that human exchange element that is unpredictable. There's greater variance in. And understanding how two people see the world, to me, is much more important than anything else, as well as how we can connect this to the underlying theory. I'm a big believer in small t truth rather than big T truth in what we're doing. Scholars never are solo. You may be a solo author, and I've published solo author papers, but you're never a solo author. You are shaped by a community. I'm thankful for those who have spent their time and devoted their careers all the way back into the 30s studying distribution channels. Because the impact, and when we changed that to sort of the behavioral dimensions in 1968, changed how the field went and what we were able to do. All of those many papers I wrote and I read have influenced me and influenced others. And so the people who have done that in the past have influenced all of us. When I went for my comprehensive exams, my advisor sat there and I said, you know, how do I study for this? And he simply said to me, you're lucky. When I got my degree in 1964, JM was only around for X number of years. Now you have 40 years to read.
Of course. That's a man.
But it was the best thing for me. Because when I hear discussions today about how we're a science, and those of you who, I've already said it here a number of times, go back to 1952. We had this discussion. Are we an art or are we a science? We've done this. We're iterative. We're cycles. To take from the futurist presentation to this morning, right? There are all these cycles that we have. So there are scholars who've shaped my thinking, my co-authors, my reviewers. You don't publish without the reviewers. We are the reviewers. You are the reviewers. We're hard on each other. That's okay. We need to be realistic and supportive and constructive and try to make those calls. I appreciate those who've challenged my work, who've supported my work and improved my work. I'm thankful for students, colleagues, family, and friends who've helped shape my ideas. Some of my friends are the best, my best friends outside of academia are the best because you get a bottle of whiskey in them and they tell you what they really think of what I'm doing in terms of which to Kirsty's point, keeps your feet grounded. Right. And then there's so many executives who I've had the opportunity to interact with, whether it's partnering with data or just bouncing ideas off of. Nothing could be more impactful to me. When I was asked to talk about the future of research, I don't want to talk about topics. It's not my thing. I believe there's so much more to learn about B2B relationships in general. I think our field of B2B needs to continue to ensure relevance, never takes a back seat to rigor or what we consider rigor of the day. I have not had a paper in 5 years that hasn't asked me to do more and more and more endogeneity testing. I was at this conference at this university years ago when one of the people Kirsty gave a big shout out to, who's over in Norway, said, they asked me to test for endogeneity of all of my variables. And I don't know how much endogeneity I can do. But we tend to focus, if we're focusing on the minutia, we're not focusing on the big thing. Sure. And you know, you're in a 10-minute conversation with me and I start talking about every 15 years, we've had the same conversation, which is, we can't lose sight of relevance for rigor. And we can name the people who do it every 15 years. There's a whole different group, but it's large scholars in the field who make this claim. And that's what I would hope we would do, to prioritize important B2B problems which scatter the globe, scatter the topics, I had a great opportunity to listen to wonderful doctoral student ideas yesterday, 3 fabulous ideas. Which makes me very, very hopeful for the future. I'm not always the most hopeful sounding person. Yeah. But I am. I wish for us to work to be the field we want to be. I've been in this business for 35 years. It's not an easy business in many ways. Colleen talked about that yesterday. But I think that what we're doing is important work, and we are gifted this profession by society who believes that thinkers are important. I worked for 4 public universities. All that means is I was a government employee taking tax dollars and donation dollars, right? We have a commitment to that. I think we want to work to build the way we want to be and then engage with the ISBM community to drive the priorities in education, in excellence, and in the journal editorial process. Every time I've talked to the AMA about JM and JM, I was an editor for Journal of International Marketing for a while, so I know a lot of the people who are still up in the executive kind of area. They're like, these are your journals. It is the community who makes the decision. We make the decision. We have great opportunities and we will do great things. So in conclusion, last slide. Thank you once again to the ISBM for this recognition. Thank you to the many scholars, mentors, co-authors, students, and colleagues who've made this journey possible. And thank you to those of you who will drive our future. I have great hope in where we're going. Thank you. If I don't present, I keep presenting. Shoes. I'm a writer.
Well, you struggled through.
Yeah, just about, right? Yeah.
Hey, I've known him since he was a doctoral student.
All right, so our third distinguished research fellow, who I've known most of the time when he was at University of Missouri. Maybe someday he'll explain why he went to the rival down the road, as this is said. But has, again, just like David and Kersey, made huge impact on our field and has also been a great asset to ISBM for all these years. Raul, the floor is yours.
Thank you. You said we got 15 minutes.
Sure, you have 15
So
minutes.
I'm going
In
to,
fact, you have 18 because while Kersey went over a bit, David was a little.
I'm going to take full advantage of my 15 minutes of fame.
Yes.
And I'm going to use slides and I'm going to mention names because I think in 15 minutes I should cover some of the important milestones in my own life. And hopefully you'll get a sense of how this journey took place. So to begin with, I want to say a bit about why I'm here in the first place, because many of you may not know, but in fact, some of anyway, let me not get into it right now. And say a few words about my career path, and then like everyone else, I'd like to thank some groups of people and talk to you a little bit about my current and evolving interests. And I do want to end with some general advice or tips for young scholars who might be interested, because there seemed to be a lot of this discussion yesterday, and I felt that I could also express my views based on my experience. But before I forget, first and foremost, I want to thank my wife, because she's been such a major support. Surya has, if your spouse doesn't take up a bunch of tasks around the house, you don't get time to really spend on research. So it is a two-way street. And I really believe that I would not be here without the support that she gave. I'm also saying this because the last thing I want to hear from her is that someone told her that I never mentioned her. Which happened, by the way. Okay, why am I here? for those who, I've got basically two broad areas of B2B research. Sales research and retail related channels research. And I'm very happy and humbled by the fact that in both streams, I've actually got awards from the respective SIGs at AMA. But the one I really like is this one, the B2B, because it encompasses both. And it's given me 15 minutes to speak. While at the AMA sales SIG, it was in a bar and nobody was paying attention to anything. And as far as the retail SIG, it was during the aftermath of COVID and everything was on Zoom and nobody was paying attention to what's on Zoom. So now I have a captive audience for about 12 minutes more.
Well, next time we'll do it during the whiskey tasting.
So anyway, I have started my career working on B2B. You can say B2B. It's broader than that, of course. Sales resource allocation, optimization, sales compensation. So I've been one of the reasons for doing that is something I'll tell you in a minute. And then I've also recently migrated to, as Andrew mentioned, media platform research. And in fact, I'd like to think that my co-authors and I were one of the first groups in marketing to publish a paper on platform firms before everyone else jumped on the bandwagon. And our main problem in life is that we never mentioned the word platform in the article. We called it dual revenues, a two-sided business. And if you had only known that this was a popular term, then maybe we would get more citations. But the next one, with my student Hari Sridhar, we did mention platforms. And I've also recently moved on from, I know all of you struggle with data, and so did I. But I figured very early in life that you shouldn't be a one-trick pony, which is you shouldn't be someone who only relies on data to do your research. If you don't have data and you have a good problem, you may as well do it some other way. For example, you could conceptualize about it, or you could do qualitative research, or you could do analytical game theoretic research. Are you ready to do all these varieties of research, or are you stuck to doing a particular paradigm for which you need data, and then all the angst about not getting it? I never was really troubled by the data as much as the problem. And I think that has helped me. I don't know if it had got me many citations, but I loved the stuff I was doing and I was happy that it got published. Recently, I've been working on the changing paradigm of B2B selling, and it is changing, not because the sales guys are changing, but it's because the buyers are changing. So the buyers on the industry side have become far more autonomous in what they do and their decision making. Very different from the kind of sales strategy you read about in textbooks. Even today, if you open the standard sales textbook, it talks as though it's the sales guy who's driving the sales process, but that is not the case any longer. And so how do you deal with a well-informed buyer and still get some value to them and make them feel that you're valuable? And we call this holistic selling in a recent article in Journal of Marketing, and we are continuing to do research. I'll say more about it later. As far as Salesforce sizing and growth in the digital age, Prabha Sinha and Arun Shastri and I, Sally Lorimer, feel that things will change, but they're not going to abandon salespeople, because the complexity of selling is actually the complexity for the buyer is growing. Every time you have a new technology which eases something else is getting more complex. Figuring out what technology to buy is becoming more complex. So there is a need for high-powered salespeople. In retailing, as Andrew mentioned, I don't know how many of you have looked into category management, but most of the problems I mentioned here are about buyer-seller relations. And category management was a new thing when we started doing this research. There was hardly any work on why do retailers do it and what gain will they get. And so that was an interesting area where The consultant said everyone would win, the manufacturer would win, the retailer would win, the customer would win. The first thing you notice when you look around the market is that the customers are facing higher prices. That's not a win for the customer. And the manufacturers are getting lower margin. That's not a win for the manufacturer. So what is happening in this channel under category management? And so we basically showed that category management is a kind of collusion actually on the part of the retailer in terms of the category brands that he manages, and as a result, prices go up and margins for the vendors shrink. So that was quite an interesting piece of work, and we had people in Publix and other supermarket chains who were being interviewed on TV in 1992, saying, is this true? This category management is actually leading to higher prices? And of course, the CEO said, no, that these academics don't know what they're talking about. So the network invited us to debate them. And I said, no way am I going to debate a CEO of the network. I'm just writing papers, right? But I did send my students into stores in Gainesville, and lo and behold, they came back and said, everyone knows that the prices have gone up. Because of, so, you know, there's sometimes things which we say actually mean something. And the other area where I had some interest was in fashion and style goods, and finally management of the information between vendors and suppliers. So a whole lot of things which I consider B2B, and I'm glad that some of you think so too. As far as my career development, let me just say for the record that I started out as a physics major. So I was a scientist, focused on hardcore science, not engineering, physics. And I think the one thing it left me with was the ability to at least think about problems. And then I went to IIM Calcutta, which is the Indian Institute of Management. And I think our dear friend Ajay Kohli was 1 year my junior in the same institute at the time. I finally finished that, and then I came to the US, and mainly because my dad, like Kersey's dad, felt that, hey, you're in sales. What are you going to do in life? I mean, so he was a scientist. He was a PhD in physics, and he thought physics was the gold standard. If you don't do physics, you're no good. So I figured that I need to do something. So my mother said, why don't you go and try to get a PhD too? So that's why I ended up in the US. And then lo and behold, I had the benefit of my first year being at a place where Frank Bass was the professor. And Frank Bass was a giant at the time. But he left the same semester I joined, and well, it was high and dry. What do we do now? So I drew a 2-hour circle around Lafayette. And I said, any school nearby, I'm going to beg them to admit me. And the first stop I made was at Kellogg, and that's a long story, so I don't have time to tell it. But let's say the end result of that was that those guys offered me admission without my even applying. Which is kind of a ridiculous thing, right? Because I only realized after coming back that, hey, I never picked up an application form. But by the time I picked up the form, I got an admission letter. So I said, wow, what's going on? So I called the secretary, and she said, well, these people, they should be better. But they figured that if you're good enough to be at Purdue, you're good enough to be at Kellogg. I mean, that was the stature of Purdue University at the time. And then I started my career as a sales guy. And in case you don't believe me, I was a pharmaceutical sales, and that's my sales team. There's me in the corner in case you don't. Which corner? Okay, that's me, all right.
Really?
Really? And
First person
that's my Salesforce team with some bigwigs from Bombay sitting in the middle. And so there was a time when I did have black full hair, you know. Anyway, so this went on. I was a sales manager, and I never really thought I would stick to sales if I go into academics. In fact, I thought I was trying to get away from sales because, you know, quotas were getting too high and life was becoming a bit difficult. But guess what? I actually ended up with a sales dissertation. And why I feel today is so special for me is my first job started 50 years ago. So it's been exactly virtually to the month and the week that I joined the pharmaceutical company. And my first academic job as an assistant professor at Florida, University of Florida, was exactly 40 years ago. I remember packing everything into our van, our hatchback, and driving all the way to Gainesville from Chicago. And that was by July 1st. So this is a great anniversary for me. And of course, I had some other milestones. Okay, who do I want to thank? I want to thank my mentors. And I do want to thank my doctoral students, who should also be thanking me, I think. So, and other influentials in the field and some co-authors. So at Kellogg, I mean, it was a plethora of riches, but the people who greatly influenced my B2B orientation started with the father of marketing, Phil Kotler. And I was so pleased, and I still feel that is my pride and joy. My first academic article is with Phil Kotler in the Journal of Consumer Marketing back in 1985 as a student. So Phil Kotler was a great influence, but he's the father of marketing. But if you really want to get into channels, you got to look at Lou Stern. So Lou Stern was a giant in the field, and I served as his TA for a whole year, and highly dynamic and influential. And of course, Lisa knows this. But neither of them was my main dissertation advisor. My advisors were, in fact, Andy Zortnerts and Prabha Sinha, Z and S. And these two guys founded ZS Associates. If any of you know that company, it was like 2 or 3 people at the time. Today, it's got 15,000 employees. And my biggest mistake was I never took a stake in that company, even though I was one of the first guys to do their projects. But I just wanted my dissertation, just like all of you, just get to your thesis. Very, very pragmatic, and of course, highly manager-oriented. So that just got instilled in my mind. Lakshman Krishnamurti is about to retire in a few weeks. Was a great influence. My first 2 formal papers in academics were with Anne Coughlin. I don't know how many of you know her, but she was a professor at Northwestern. She's now retired. And of course, Jim Anderson, who is if you don't know Jim Anderson, you should be in B2B marketing, right? So Jim was not on my committees, but he was around. And just watching him and talking to him was a big deal. And now my doctoral students. I have 6 who actually were chaired by me. But there are many, many more who are on committees. But so the first and foremost, and all of them have written papers related to B2B with me. I think some of these names are familiar to you. Prasad Naik is chair professor at UC Davis. Hari Sridhar, believe it or not, is still unbelievable, but he became editor-in-chief of Journal of Marketing. It's unbelievable because you got to know how he was when I first met him. But we won't.
We can do this.
Elena Tang, she's a tenured associate professor now at Northern Illinois. And Vamsi Kanuri is a tenured associate professor at University of Notre Dame. Ovid is a tenured associate professor at Southern Illinois. And Yeji is an assistant professor at California State. I also have 2 current students who I hope made it by now to this room. Yes. If you, what happened to the other guy?
I'll bring it on. Where are you?
Whole thing is a build-up for you.
Yeah.
So, both of them seem to have potential. We will see in the next few weeks or months. And I hope by talking to them, you can make your own assessment. All right, then of course there are the influentials. One of my mentors outside of Kellogg is Bart Weiss. I don't know how many of you have met or talked to him, but he was also a giant in the channels and B2B domain. Sonke Alberts is regarded as the father of marketing science in Germany. In fact, he has a whole conference in his own name. He's got like 80 descendants who got PhDs or who got PhDs from his PhDs. Wilson-Sheth, of course, we heard about him, and I thought he might be here, but Gary is an inspiration always because of his foundational activity here, as well as I remember the first TIMS conference. Those days was TIMS in Miami, and he was interfaces editor, and this was 1988 or something like that. And he would come out, and just when everyone is finished, he'd come and say, "You need to publish relevant research, and Interfaces is the journal in which you should publish it." But if ever there was someone who emphasized the relevance aspect along with rigor, it's Gary. I cannot end this thank yous without Lisa, because Lisa was my colleague for 18 years at Missouri, but she's also a presence in the B2B field, and just being around, although as a department chair, sometimes we had, I would say not everything was super pleasant. But we managed and we got along. And of course, Sundar and Mark, neither of them is here, but I want to thank them for selecting us. I have many co-authors who are in different parts of the world. One of my closest is Kalyan Raman, but he passed away, and I'm very sorry about that. Steve Brown was my co-editor-in-chief at Journal of Retailing, and everyone knows Venki Shankar, and Shankar Ganesan was Journal of Retailing, Kelly Hewitt, Journal of International Marketing. Main point is that somehow over time you get to meet some great people, and you need to cultivate them because it turns out very valuable. Okay, what about holistic selling? So why do I think this is so important? Well, I was very disappointed. For example, I went to Lisbon for the Marketing Science Conference. Guess how many sessions were there devoted to B2B sales? Zero. There was absolutely no session in marketing science. I mean, this is like the nadir of, I've been seeing the decline in over time, but there was no session focused on sales at the premier marketing science conference in our field. And it's unbelievable to me, because what are they talking about then? And everything they're talking about seems to be things that academics find important, but they're not talking about things that practitioners feel are important. And so I'm very happy that here, at least, I feel back on, solid ground. It is still the most expensive marketing investment. And if anybody thinks that sales is about to be ruled out, they're mistaken, because every interview we do, and anybody in sales who we talk to say what the nature of the job is changing. Nobody denies that. But the kind of added value that a sales rep adds, a human sales rep, over and above AI, let's say we grant AI every power that you imagine, which we all talk about. Let's grant them that. Do you think buyers will proceed without ever talking to a sales guy if AI could do everything? Well, it turns out that there is always that nagging doubt whether they've got it right, and there's always some customized issue for a buyer, which AI has not figured out, which a sales guy can figure out. And what we are trying to say is that B2B sales remains critical. It may change in nature, and the investments are among the most highest for companies. Why aren't we studying how that transition is going to take place? And AI will transform sales, but it's not the AI part which is interesting there. What's interesting is what does it leave for salespeople to do, and the way to approach that question is not from the selling side; it's from the buyer side, because it's the buyer who figures out whether there's a need for sales. And so that's what we're trying to do here. Really understand from the buyer what added value does a salesperson add in a complex sale. Okay, for routine sales, you've got all kinds of segmentation you can do. And there is absolutely little knowledge on this from what we can see. So to me, this is a productive domain for research, and which makes a difference, because you're talking about billions of dollars being spent on sales in practice by B2B companies. So hopefully more people will pick up the baton for this. Okay, tips for some young scholars.
About a minute.
A minute. Okay, so this is partly triggered by what I was hearing yesterday, and I think all of your problems will be solved if you do one thing consistently, which is choose an interesting and new problem, which from the field, not from someone else's papers or some, over some dialogue, but really from the field, because ultimately you'll get it published. If it is new and important and no one has done it, you will get it published regardless of what quality of data you have, because no one has the right answer. So if you can convince people that you have an answer, at least some answer, it should move forward. I would not be tempted to do research based on whether I have a data set. I would like to figure out the best problem and the best way to answer. And you'll be surprised. I have found over time that if you think of a really interesting problem, you don't need such complicated data. The reviewers will let it go through, because even the reviewers don't have a clue what's the answer to the question. And so if you have some support, it's better to go with big problems. And to do that, as I already said, you need to be flexible and adaptive. I'm not sure why our field, silos people so much. They should be more broad in their approach. And on a personal level, in terms of relationships, I really believe you need to be loyal to your advisors and your students and your co-authors. When I say loyal, I mean, sometimes you get into conflict, sometimes you have fights, but in the long run, having some folks on your side throughout makes a difference in your career. And I've seen people fight with their advisors within a couple of years or even earlier, and it doesn't help, because we're not in a personality business. We're in an academic research business. So any personality conflict should be overcome pretty easily, and the focus should remain on knowledge. So I think loyalty is an important thing. And the other thing is, don't waste time on rankings and odious comparisons. If you're really productive, it'll show. If you think you're super productive or you're not super productive, if you think you're super productive and just look upward, you'll find somebody else has done 10 more papers than you. And like the other day, I think Girish had put up a rankings. Pradeep Chittagunda has 91 papers. Pradeep is one of my A papers. He's one of my closest friends, and I respect him tremendously. But I'm never going to try to be like Pradeep. And even if I am the second person who has 60 papers, right? So all that is nonsense in my view. You've got to address some real good problems. And if you leave at least some real good nuggets of wisdom, it doesn't matter how much quantity you have. But this is post-tenure. Thank you.
So, our last presentation is going to come from, so if you guys want to go ahead and share, and I'll get it situated so it's on the screen correctly. So our last presentation is, we also, every 2 years, give out an award for a paper that has had a long-term impact on B2B research. And as mentioned at lunch, this paper was, I believe, a 2016 paper, and we have the three authors who worked on the paper together here with us, and we are going to, let me shift it to the screen here, and we are going to have them share a little bit about how this paper came about. Almost there. All right, I think. All right, so I have your paper up on the main screen. So whenever you're ready, Emma, Mike, you go ahead and take us along.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? I'm Hugh, and I'm starting.
Yes, we can hear you.
Lovely. I'm from Warwick Business School in the UK, and I'm kicking us off. So, firstly, huge thanks for this honour. I'm flabbergasted, really, given the previous winners of this. So, very many thanks from all of us to ISBM, and particularly to the award committee, and indeed to the Sheth Foundation Award and David Wilson's memory. Our topic is solutions. And we were also intrigued to see that two of the last winners also published two of the major papers on solutions, which we looked to build on in this paper. The Olaga and Reinhardt's paper in 2011 we found really useful because the word solution doesn't necessarily imply you're joining together goods with related services, but that's kind of where the mission kind of began, and they reframed this as around resources, and in particular what resources the supplier needs to be a successful solution seller, as it kind of later got rebranded. And the Tuli, Colley and Baharadwaj paper also we found resonant with what we observed in practice with their complementary focus on relational processes. Certainly solutions are very relational things. They don't magically give value the moment you've sold it, or indeed the moment it kind of goes live. Value unpacks over time, as does the solution itself. None of those, however, answered our exam question, which was, how does the customer judge solutions? How do they evaluate it in terms of value and quality? That's the first question we wanted to answer of three. And to answer it, I'll take us back to 2006, when I was in a place called Cranfield School of Management, a post-experience business school in the United Kingdom. I come from a background in B2B tech with IBM and Xerox for my first two employers, and they both had this challenge. IBM was famously saved by Lou Gerstner in the 1990s, who was the chief executive. We were within months of going bust, and Lou radically steered the firm towards making more of our money from services and digging more deeply into services on the client's site and looking to solve their fundamental problems rather than sell them kit. And Xerox attempted the same route. And in both cases, not least the salespeople wanted to know, well, how much value are we creating for our current customers so that we can show it off to our prospective customers? In 2006, I was 2 years into my first academic job. I was a research fellow in Cranfield, and I was doing some exploratory interviews around this topic, and I spoke to Kat, in particular their VP of service, who confessed that not only did he have the same problem, but also the previous year, the chief executive had given him in his KPIs for his bonus, a proportion of his bonus would depend on the perceived value of Kat's product service solutions to the customer. Halfway through the year, he persuaded the chief executive to cross it off his KPI list because neither of them had any idea how they could measure it. So there seemed to be a problem here. And staggeringly, after we received the news of this award, I managed to find the flip chart on which I'd first kind of floated this idea to a couple of colleagues of researching the perceived value from solutions. So if you've got the solution kind of on the left and the value perceived on the right, and indeed the service perceived on the right, we didn't think it could be just the sum of service quality and product quality. That didn't make sense, because kind of in some sense we're bundling them together and unifying them around the solution. So we didn't know what that looked like. And I was interested to see, looking back, that this kind of arrow here was representing the observation that we were kicking around at the time, that in a sense something important about solutions was that we're playing with the boundary between the supplier and the firm in a creative way to create most value for both parties. And that turned out to be quite a foundational observation in the data that came out. So the following year, I wrote a proposal to a grant body that enabled us to employ a research fellow, which was Emma. Indeed, in that proposal, I see we were quoting another interview with Rolls-Royce, who said much the same thing as Kat had been saying. It goes back to this perception of benefit. If they don't see what they're getting, they think they're getting nothing. So what do you do? So they were interested in the research as well. So we duly got the grant, which enabled us to entice Emma to come to Cranfield and give up on her job in London Business School. You spent your first 14 months collecting data, Emma, for this project. So over to you for the next part of the story and the second of our 3 questions we were asked to answer.
Okay, thanks very much, Hugh. So yes, this was a very exciting project, which tempted me away from a couple of other opportunities. And so I'm going to have to ask Hugh to move to the next slide. I went out and interviewed 4 manufacturers who all managed factories and were worried about factory equipment, repair and operations. They were from a range of different sectors, as you can see. And in total, I interviewed 36 people using repertory grid technique. And the next slide shows you how this technique works. And it's a lovely approach for getting some really depth insights from your interviewees, who almost co-create the interview with you. So the question we asked them was, in what ways are 2 of these suppliers in front of you here similar to each other and different from the third in terms of the outcomes that you get? And we found that was the best way to get into solution quality and value, which is what we were trying to understand. And you can see here on the slide that in this example, the interviewee has sorted the 3 cards that each represent a supplier into 2 piles. And the pile on the left are ones that score low on the dimension of only solving a little bit of my problem. And on the right, giving us a complete offering and doing it all for us. And so through that process, the interviewee is telling you about the dimensions that matter to them from a point of view of solution quality and the outcomes for them. And a further approach within that interview is I would say to them, okay, that's interesting. Why does that matter to you? Why is that important to you? And that actually comes up again later in the method. So we had collected a lot of data, and Hugh and I were then working out what to do with it. So this has been a funded project. We were delivering on that side of things, but we wanted to publish it really well. We thought we were onto something really nice. And we went to a wonderful conference in Capri in Italy. And I already knew Michael, but I introduced Michael and Hugh, and we all got along fantastically. And so a year later, we approached Michael, who's worked in B2B for many, many years, and said, would you like to join us on the project? And so then started a whole series of workshops. So you're going to see a timeline here, thanks to Michael's excellent record keeping and photo library. So basically, across 4 years in different countries, we met. So we were taking it a bit slowly at this time, working through the data. And then we started feeling like we're getting close to having something. So next slide, you'll see in 2015, we really got busy. And we had a few workshops together, either in Berlin or Cranfield, and we finally felt ready. And this is a big thing. None of us had published in Journal of Marketing before. So we finally felt ready to submit a paper to JM in December 2015. And off it went. And we had a nice Christmas. And then in February, the next year, we got our R&R, which we were really impressed with because that was quite speedy. And then we were told again, we did another round, did another R&R, and we're told we had a week for that resubmission. So we finally sent it in February 2016 and had it accepted in March 2016. So we were delighted. Okay, so what did we do? Well, we had almost 900 pages of text to analyze. So during those workshops, we spent quite a lot of time looking at what that data said, categorizing that into components of solution quality or value. We used the proportional reduction in loss calculation of rust and coil to establish the reliability of that data by checking with other coders. Next slide. And we did this a few times, and I think we did a very nice job in our appendix, if I don't say so myself, is summarizing our methods. So the whole method's in there if you want to look at what we did. And as a result, we came up with this emerging model. We thought, this is fantastic. We've got solution quality, we've got value, we've unpacked it all, we've explained it all, and we sent it into JM. And this is where the review process really helped us, because the reviewers said, yeah, you have got some nice constructs there, but you haven't actually shown the connection between solution quality and value. And but you've got it in your data because you've used laddering. You've said to these interviewees, why does this matter? Why is that important? So that's when I felt really good as an interviewer, that I'd been very thorough. And so here's an example of what we did. We were then mapping out ladders between constructs. So for instance, in this example, a proactive supplier is managing our spares really well, that's saving us downtime, and it's increasing our competitive advantage. So we were able to map all those links between the solution quality and the value and use. And then following that technique, you can see we had to go through all the interviews, and this is when we were doing the recoding, identify all these links, and we ended up coming up with 609 ladders out of all of the interviews. We then created what's called an implications matrix, which is the next slide, and it shows you all the connections between the constructs in our data. And if you go to the next slide again, you'll see a summarized version of the implications matrix, and you'll see, you can see the link there very strongly from quality to value that comes out from that data. So as a result of that approach, we also then had a lot more richness in this data. And if you go to the next slide, following this approach through, you can draw what's called a hierarchical value map, which shows the link between your different constructs, on the left being more concrete, and then to more abstract towards the right of that diagram. So that's one of the things it shows. It also shows how important that construct is by showing how big the circle is, and the links between the lines obviously showing how strongly they're connected. So we were able, from this process, then to draw a conceptual model, which is the next slide, and draw out a number of propositions, which we're not going to go into, but again, they're all in the paper. And so if we go to the next slide, these were the main results. So we had a lot of interesting findings from this, but the main results were that solution quality includes quality assessments of both parties' resources and processes, not just the supplier. Again, many B2B people in the room, you guys probably know that, but I think that was a really useful insight. The very nature of the solution is jointly designed and evolved through a joint resource integration process, which itself is quality assessed by the customer. Value and use is managed, redefined, and optimized through a value auditing process of both supplier and customer. And that again is quality assessed. So there was lots of discussion around, we need to do things better, they should do things better, and so on. And so we came up with our definition of solutions, which is shown here. which is the combining of supplier and customer processes and resources through a joint resource integration process to create both collective and individual value and use, which is monitored and optimized through value auditing processes. So I'll hand over now to Michael, who'll talk about some of the impacts.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Emma, for taking us to this journey in 5 minutes. That's great. Years of work in 5 minutes. Yeah, and what was the outcome, and how was how does the outcome of our research resonate to the community? And as Emma just explained, the main results of the paper, we're very happy to show you that all of these different aspects really went into the literature. So first of all, this idea that solution quality is something that is not only driven by the supplier, but also by the customer themselves. And they also reflect on their own resources and how they drive with their actions and with their resources, how they drive the quality. And this went into the literature, for instance, of solution business, not surprisingly, also to servitization, because they also look on solutions, but more from the transition processes on the customer, on the supplier side, and also in the later years into the literature on subscription-based businesses. So this was this basic idea that solution quality is something different than only the quality of what the supplier does and delivers. Next slide, you. Then importantly, value in use is important, and not only value in exchange. And that was maybe, at least for me personally, one of the biggest insights to show that what is happening after the sales process is done, after sales, what is happening there is so important for the success, not only of the solution, but also for the success of a relationship. And that this value in use that is experienced by the customers is categorically different to value in exchange, because value in use is something that is developing over time during the entire process of the solution usage. And this is totally different to value in exchange when the two parties make a deal. And this again has a huge impact. No, sorry, back. Has huge impact on was received in categorization or conceptualizations of customer perceived value in business markets, on value creation and value capture in business markets, and value-based selling. Yeah, because in value-based selling you have to anticipate this later coming value realization, and also what does it mean for the design of the value proposition. Then next, please. And also interestingly is that we could show that the quality and especially the value of solution is not only perceived and evaluated by the firm or by people who represent the whole firm, but all of the individuals. Emma told you about the 36 people she interviewed, and many of them were shop floor people, and they also experienced the value. And so we came up with the idea of the usage center. Everybody knows the buying center, and there is a little bit of the user in the buying center, but yeah, but again, what is happening afterwards when something is when a solution is used by sometimes, if you think of IT solutions, thousands of people in a firm, they all experience the value of a solution. And that went into this idea of the usage center. There's some literature on that now already, and especially into customer experience and customer journeys in business market, because these members of the usage center are all experiencing the journey. Within the journey, they experience in the value, the solution and the value of the solution. Next slide. Then Emma just talked a little bit about the method. And interestingly, so we applied this theory and use approach, and our paper was also mentioned by Valerie Zeithamel and her colleagues in the paper on value and on the theories and use approach. But interestingly for me is that we could really show from the letters the causality that was in the mind of the interviewees. So we never had a letter where somebody came from value to quality. They all talked about the chain from quality to value. So the causality that is in the heads of the people who reflect on what is going on, we could surface this from our interviews. And I think this is something that could be used much, much more. And this quantitative method of analyzing these ladders based on qualitative data, I think is a very interesting methodological approach. Last but not least, it has managerial and strategic implications. Yeah, so it's not about selling or pricing product service bundles. We have to think about the joint resource integration efforts with the customers. Both sides have to have certain competencies, and it's a continuous thing, the value creation. So if value is developing over time, then the suppliers have also the time they can use to influence this perceived value on the customer side. And that went into value and use management, or in IT services, it's called customer success management. So this is also where this topic went, this theme that we investigated in our study went into. So it's value and use management, customer success management. It went into the question, what are solution-specific customer capabilities and supplier capabilities? And last but not least, also into the literature on sales management, where people have to think about what they are selling. So they are selling these processes that and not the solution itself. The solution is a process that needs to be performed with together with the customer. So once again, thanks a lot for awarding us with this very prestigious award. We are very honored. Thanks to the committees, thanks to ISBM, Stefan, and to the Sheth Foundation for this honor. And we are very glad to present this paper here. And if you haven't read it, there's a barcode you can scan and can download. So thanks a lot.
So this wraps up our session on our scholars, our fellows, and our award winners who are on the screen. So coming up next, before the scholars and fellows leave, we have a nice plaque for you. I'd like you guys to come down here. We'll take a photo, and then we'll have the 30-minute break is here. At 3:30, we'll start our concurrent sessions. One of the sessions will be in this room again. The other session will be, I believe, in room 231. So by 3:30, 201 or 231, we'll have two different concurrent sessions. Thank you very much for you guys connecting with us remotely. It was great to have you here, even if we couldn't have you in person. And congratulations again on the Wilson-Sheth Award.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, if the two scholars can come on up and get you want to stand there and take a picture? Get you a front chair.
Yeah, just let me know for sure.
Lori's daughter. Yeah, I think we have the Emory background.
You go, I know. Everybody would have been able to call it.
Thank you.
That's Marvel. Congratulations.
Scoot over just a little more.
I got you off on a good foot.
All right.
That class was fun.
I still thought.
It was a fun.
Yeah.
And you know, they were, and even.
Yes. Oh, you just scared the hell out of me then. You checked the phone. Make sure that they're on the right time. That was so obvious for me.
So, I should note. You guys can hear me. Said he would. Lori will be able to. You guys are big. Come with us.
Do you want to say something again? You were saying, can you hear me?
I would.
Yeah.
Get ready to run out the window. That's right. The brick wall.
I don't pass. That now gets. That she wants.
So we have to place with hearings. And we need to it. Yes. So we.
Wanted to know if they had their flags, but if they did, we were gonna take a picture of them on the screen. I was just gonna run out in the hall and see.
I know.
Now it goes up with
We are.
So
they're here and if Lori has their flag, which I don't know if she does, they wanted their.
The other way around.
I don't know. I don't know that.
Hiya.
Now he's on. He gave you away.
Yeah, would you like to more on it?
No, he has not. Just been.
during the session. And therefore it doesn't interfere.
You tell me the, yeah.